Welcome to all. In this session we are going to discuss about the products and services. Products and services, service management, central component of service management. Of course, the service, the nature of the service will now be considered. Outline given the relationship is configuring resource for value creation. The service that an organization provides are based on one or more of its products. Organizations own or have access to variety of resources including people, information and technology, value streams and processes, and partners and suppliers. Products are configurations of these resources created by the organizations that will potentially be valuable for its customers. Definition of the service, products and services. Service means enabling value co-creation by facilitating outcomes that consumers want to achieve without the customer having to manage specific cost and risk. Product, a configuration of an organization, so organization's resource designed to offer value for a consumer. So services will be created by the organization for the value co-creation. So facilitating outcomes that customer want to achieve that will be provided by the organization or not, that achieves the service value. So product means a configuration of an organization resource designed to offer value for consumer. So in this offer is, each product that an organization offers is created with a number of targeted consumer groups in mind. The products will be tailored to appeal to and meet the needs of these groups. A product is not exclusive to one consumer group and it can be used to address the needs of several different groups. Products typically complex and not fully visible to the consumer. The proportion of a product that the consumer actually sees does not always represent all of the components that comprise the product and support its delivery. Organizations define which product component their consumers see, tailoring them to suit their target consumer groups. Service offerings. Service providers present their services to consumers in the form of service offerings, which describe one or more services based on one or more products. Service offering is a formal description. In this, one or more service offering means basing depending upon the products which they are obtained by the organization. Service offerings will be depending upon them only. So address needs to be targeted consumer group, and service offerings may include goods, access to resources, service actions, all those. So service goods to be supplied to a consumer. Basically, if you take an example of a mobile phone, that mobile goods are supported to be transferred from one provider to the consumer, with the consumer taking the responsibility for their future use. Access to resources granted or licensed to a consumer under agreed terms and conditions. For example, the mobile phone is purchased from one mobile organization or a company that will be licensed by that organization. They will provide the license and conditions and terms that the mobile network or the network storage will be different. So mobile network or the mobile storage is a resource which they are going to permitted to, by the organization. So resource means resources that are used by the organization, accessed by the organization, are to be provided to the consumer. and the resources remains under the provider's control and can be accessed by the consumer only during the agreed services consumption period. Service actions performed to address a consumer needs and supports. For example, if the service provider is a mobile network, GSM, whatever they are going to use in the mobile phone, mobile network is a service, and service provider means the network storage, whatever they are going to provide the organization. So service actions performed to address consumer needs. Basing on the users support only, organization had to take care of all the components. So if the services are offered to the targeted consumer groups, then those groups may be either internal or external to the service provider organization. So different offerings can be created based on the same product, which will allow us to be multiple ways to address a need to different consumer groups. For example, software version can be offered as a limited free version or as a comprehensive paid for version based on one product of the service provider. For this, you can take an example. If you purchase a laptop, for that laptop, operating system operating system is can be offered by the Windows operating system or whatever it may be, depending upon the company product and company service provider. They will provide comprehensive versions. Components of a service offerings. Component is goods supplied to consumer. Ownership is transferred to the consumer. Consumer takes the responsibility for future use also. If you purchase a mobile, after purchasing of the mobile, the consumer is the main consumer is the owner of the goods. So automatically ownership will be transferred to the consumer, and consumer will take responsibilities of the future use also, either physical device or else application oriented. He is the owner of the component. He is the owner of the components. So next one, access to resources. Ownership is not transferred to the consumer. Resources ownership is not transferred to the consumer. Access is granted or licensed to the consumer under agreed terms and conditions. The consumer can only access the resources during the agreed consumption period and according to other agreed service terms. For example, accessing a mobile networks or network storage area is the best example for the access to resources. Ownership is not transferred to the consumer because your mobile network is not network storage is not transferred to the completely not transferred to the not transferred to the consumer, and access granted, some permissions are granted and licensed under the agreed terms and conditions only. User need to access, and the consumer can only access the resources during the agreed consumption period only if certain limits were be maintained. For example, if you want to maintain mobile network, if you recharge it as prepaid or postpaid, whatever it may be, if you recharge it as for 28 days, other than 28 days you can't use it. Like that, the service and terms conditions will be provided to the consumers, and basing on the guidelines of license provided to the consumers only, services will be provided. So accessing permissions will be limited. Service actions. performed by the service provider to address a consumer's needs, basing on the user support, replacement of a piece or equipment, whatever it may be. uh, Basing on the situation, if a consumer demands service actions, these type of services actions that will be performed by the service offering centers. Service provider will simply address the consumer needs and performed according to an agreement with the consumer. If a mobile is broken, or your mobile display is lapsed, then automatically you will provide service center will provide services basing on the guidelines provided license agreement. Next one, service relationship. So what is service relationship? Service relationship are established between two or more organizations to co-create value. In a service relationships, organizations will take on the roles of service providers or service consumers. The two roles are not mutually exclusive, and organizations typically both provide and consume a number of services at any given time. The service relationship model includes, for example, a training service improves the skills of the consumer's employees. A broadband service allows consumers' computer to communicate. Car hire service enables the consumer's staff to visit clients. A software development service creates a new application for the service. So, service relationship will be like that. Organization 1, organization A, B, C, D. These four organizations are working together. If the organization service consumer can use new or modified resources to create its own product to address the needs to another target consumer group, thus become a service provider. Service relationship, a cooperation between a service provider and service consumer. Service relationships include service provision, service consumption, and service relationship management. Service provision activities performed by an organization to provide services. Service provisions include. What is service provision? Service provision is activities performed by the organization to provide services. Service provision includes management of the provider services, configured and to deliver the services, ensuring access to these resources for users, and fulfillment of the agreed service actions, service level management, and continual improvement. So all these were the service provisionals. So every service provision activities includes all these. Service management, relationship management maintained by all these provisions. Service provision may include goods, and service consumption activities include performed organization to consume services. Consumption includes management, consumer resources, needed services to the service actions performed by the user. Value, outcomes, cost, and risk. So, achieving desired outcomes requires resources and is often associated with the risk. Service providers help their consumers to achieve outcomes, and in doing so. So, what is outcome? Outcome is output, a tangible or intangible deliverable of an activity. Outcome, a result for a stakeholder enabled by one or more outputs. So, to achieving a value, affected outcomes, cost introduced, risk introduced, supported outcomes, affected incomes, supported incomes, and cost introduced, cost removed, risk introduced, and risk removed. So, what are clear differences in between them? What affected outcomes is different from the supported outcomes. So, outputs are different from the outcomes. So for example, if a photography service may be album in which selected photos are artfully arranged. So photography shoot is different from the photography service. Outcome service will be, however, the presentation of memories, the ability of the couple and their family and friends to easily recall those memories. Depending upon the Depending upon the relationship between the provider and the consumer, it can be difficult for the provider to fully understand the outcomes the consumer wants to achieve. In some cases, it will work together, benefited for desired outcomes. For example, business relationship manager in internal IT or HR departments may regularly talk with customers and discuss their needs and expectations. In other cases, the consumers articulate their acceptance quite clearly and the providers expects them to do so. Cost. The amount of money spent on a specific activity or resource. There are two types of cost involved in service relationship. Cost removed from the consumer by the service. This may include cost of staff, technology and other resources which the consumer does not need to provide. Cost imposed on the consumer by the service, total cost of the consuming other services include price changed, other providers, plug and other costs such as staff training. All this comes under the cost. Risk. Risk may be possible event that could cause harm or less or make it more difficult to achieve objects, can be defined as uncertainty of outcome and can be used in the context of measuring the probability of positive outcomes as well as negative outcomes also. So risk can be removed from the consumers by the service, or there may be failure in consumer server hardware or lack of staff availability. Risks can be imposed on a consumer by the service. That's all. Thank you.